The biggest game in the Big Ten is this weekend. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slasher U. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with my co host, Steve Feck. And we're going to break down Michigan taking on Ohio State. This is a game that we have been talking about for a very long time on this channel. We finally get it. Number 3 versus number 2. They stayed unbeaten. We get exactly what we hoped for, Steve. Both of these teams taking on each other to really decide who is the best team in the Big Ten and who is going to solidify themselves in a spot in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, well, I was so busy keeping track of how many Michigan State players were being indicted for what happened in the tunnel against Michigan. I almost lost track of this game here. But yeah, and we could. I was going to write down all these interesting stats and things, but you're going to hear that ad nauseum all through the build up to this game. It's the only thing that jumped out at me, and it came out of the football championship playoff show, is the strength of schedule. We've been hatcheting Michigan for their, I wouldn't even call it a cupcake. I would call it, I don't know what I would call it. It's almost like a Twinkie or a ho-ho kind of schedule. It wasn't even as fancy as a cupcake, in our opinion. But when you look at the strength of schedule, actually Ohio State's is like 10 ranking points worse than Michigan's. So, I mean, maybe we've been giving Ohio State a little bit too much credit and maybe not giving enough credit to Michigan.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, when you get this far down in the season, I feel like when it's that close, I know it's only about 20 spots different. Now, take that as you will. Do you think that's close or you don't think that's close? But if you can both make it 11-0 through the Big Ten, I feel like that's got to be one of the opponents that Michigan played that Ohio State didn't. I think Illinois is one of those teams that Ohio State didn't play. I don't remember Ohio State playing Illinois. So,
I don't think they did either.
So that's probably the biggest change, if anything, right? Because Michigan had a tough time at Illinois, who was ranked at one point. So maybe that's the case. Regardless, they're both 11-0. They make it to the end, both undefeated. They found a way to do it. There's some times that we saw that might not happen. Kind of a few times more with Michigan. So if you want to lean a little bit saying maybe we're thinking about Ohio State too much, you could probably have the same argument about Michigan. There was a moment in the Maryland game early in the season where Michigan had to really step up on their horse. There was a moment in the Indiana game where they really had to change things. And then against Illinois, there were some moments as well. The thing that happened, just like we always love to talk about in the show, they found a way to win. JJ McCarthy has done a fantastic job for this squad. He really answered the call once Harbaugh gave him the starting position, and we're really going to see him tested. And if he can find a way to do it against Ohio State, I think we're solidifying him as not only a good quarterback in Michigan, but we might see him at a different level because of that. And I'm really interested to see what happens for him. Of course, we have to talk about Blake Corum as well for Michigan. I feel like we can't leave him out of the conversation. He is the only one in my mind that is not a quarterback that deserves to be a Heisman finalist. He is lights out. I mean, he is absolutely helping JJ McCarthy with the job he has to do. 243 yards rushing for Michigan, averaging per game. And a lot of that is on the back of Blake Corum. He is just one amazing player, Steve. I don't know any else how to say
it. He's the kind of player that, again, maybe during the game you kind of overlook because he'll break a run here and there, but he's just not a flashy guy. And there's so many terrific athletes on the Michigan team, that I think he just does his job. He just puts his head down and does his job. And, the comparison I want to make here, and it's a little different because Barry Sanders was a little flashier, but Barry Sanders at the end of every game, you look down and say, wow, he was even better than I thought. And that's what Blake Corum does. He scores a bunch of touchdowns or sets a bunch of things up. And then you look at the score sheet and say, wow, he has almost 200 yards rushing, or, he caught X number of, passes out of the backfield. So I thought that was the best analogy between, a Detroit-based, Michigan-based professional running back and Blake Corum. Again, Blake Corum's a different kind of runner, but that's the kind of impact that he has on a game, like Barry Sanders did with the Lions. And Barry Sanders played for some brutal teams, yet at the end of every game, he not only did his job, he exceeded what anything might have been projected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this guy is averaging, or not averaging, he's had 100 yards or more in the last 8 games. If he gets at least 18 carries, he is set to go over 100 yards. That's what it looks like compared to his game logs. The only other games that he hasn't gone over 100 yards, he just didn't play the entire time because they blew him out. It was the beginning of the season where we thought they had a cupcake schedule, but as you said, their strength of schedule is better than Ohio State's. On the Buckeyes side, you have to talk about the offensive just power of this Buckeye squad. And I don't know if it's been in question maybe sometime during the season. I think you could probably make the argument in some of these games, but CJ Stroud has really been a fantastic quarterback. We're going to hear his name as a finalist in the Heisman race. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Almost 3,000 yards passing, 35 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. The guy's only been sacked 7 times. That's impressive. Shout out to the offensive line. His wide receivers are immaculable as well. I mean, they're just amazing. Ohio State, you could make the argument, has the best offense in college football. You could make that argument. I don't know if I'm going to make it myself, but I can see how you could make it. I think we are in for an absolute treat in this matchup, Steve.
I do too. And I'm going to say this before I say what I'm going to say. I want to say again, hate tweets go to @FecklessWonder, not SlasherU.
You can bring him there too.
Not at Row Report. Okay.
You
Because
can bring
I'm
him.
saying this.
Nah, bring him on.
Get Is Stroud really a Heisman finalist? Heisman candidate? I know what the numbers say.
Mhm.
Has he really made a positive impact on any of the games that they played? Or is he just orchestrating and playing with such terrific athletes that he's able to be an accumulator rather than someone that puts up the numbers? He's just accumulating it based on teams that just can't match up with them athletically.
I'm gonna leave my rebuttal for the people in the comment section on that one. Good luck, my
Okay.
friend. Good
Yeah,
luck.
I know. Yeah. That's why I'm trying to keep it away from you. But I mean, honestly, it's just this is why I always worry about Ohio State because I mean, they just kind of cruise. They recruit a specific type of player, and they're always the high ceiling athletic types. But I don't know that they're game breakers. I don't know that they're game changers ever. You going back the last 10 years, I just don't see Ohio State teams in that light. And again, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
a Rutgers fan, so I'm used to them just kicking the tail of the Scarlet Knights, on an annual basis. But I can say that about any Big Ten team. But I just don't. I have a feeling that if Michigan is successful, as they have been most of the season,
Mhm.
grinding it out and controlling the clock in the first half, and wearing down that defense and then giving the Michigan coaching staff time to see in real time where mismatches might be there as far as, a coverage or whatever it is, and then have Michigan pour it on in the second half. Um, I really can see Michigan winning this handily. They're not going to blow them out, but I can see Michigan winning by 2 scores on this. If they were able to execute their game plan and they can keep Ohio State's offense off the field in the first half for the most part and limit whatever damage that the Buckeye offense can put up.
Regardless, this game has a lot of smack talk, if you will, a lot of a lot of hope for each side. This is you could consider this the Super Bowl for the majority of these teams. I mean, obviously the national championship is one thing, but if you lose this game, it's a bad season. And I mean, that's we heard from Ryan Day as well. I mean, literally his quote says, "When you lose this game, it's a tough year." And I mean, you could win the national championship, but if you lose to Michigan or you lose to Ohio
Mhm.
State, I mean, there's some people who won't use the letter M in text messages this week. So put that into context. So interesting. Both of these teams coming to this game unbeaten for the first time since 2006. I think that's pretty interesting. This is the 13th time since 1942 that both of them will clash as a top 5 team in the Associated Press top 25. And the last time it was number 2 versus number 3. 2016. If you are a fan of this series, 2016 was one of the best games in this series, and that was when Ohio State beat the third-ranked Michigan team 30-27 in double overtime. That was one of the best games. If you have to rank it, I can see a lot of people putting 2016 as number one. Last year was no joke either. It was a great game as well. This is going to be a really great game. Ohio State is favored 7.5 going into this one. Steve, I think I already know where you're going, but let me know, what do you think about that spread? -7.5 for Ohio State.
I think people need to really consider. Unfortunately, it's a holiday weekend in the state, so you really can't go to a bank and try to get a second mortgage or go to the casino and to the sports books and bet it. If I could pull it off, I mean, if I had serious savings, I'd be taking it out and I'd be putting it on Michigan in this game. And I really don't like Jim Harbaugh. I really, I see him and I can feel my pacemaker like jump. I mean, it literally jumps. If I just watch him on the sidelines, there's something about him. He's not quite Lane Kiffin, but he's in that territory. I think Michigan is going to make a statement here that last year wasn't a fluke. We are a better team for 4 quarters than Ohio State is.
I am going to lean towards Michigan with the points here. I think they have a good chance of winning this game. However, I just don't think, regardless of who wins this game, it's going to be a margin of 7.5. So by more than 8 points. So that's why I'm taking the points on this one. I could see this being another classic like 2016. I could see it go to overtime. I could see this happening. These teams are fairly matched pretty well. I mean, I do really think that's the case. I think it could come out either way. I'm looking forward to this game. This game's on noon on Saturday. Columbus is going to be 102,000 strong. I mean, this is one of the best atmospheres in college football when we see this one. A couple days after Thanksgiving, they show up. This is honestly, I'm not a fan of either of these teams, but I look forward to this game every year. It's one of those games you just look forward to, Steve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've had the pleasure of being at Ohio State for a Michigan game, and it's just as nasty as some of the comments are. It's not like you're going to Philadelphia and they're booing Santa Clauses and pelting them with snowballs. I mean, they'll never admit it, but if the other side wins, they begrudgingly, really quietly, or maybe when they go home, they lock themselves in a closet somewhere and say, boy, Michigan just beat us or Ohio State just beat us. But in that stadium, yes, there's a lot of yelling, there's a lot of trash talking, but those fans make that an event, not just a football game. It is an event. So if you've never had the chance to do that, I encourage you somehow on your bucket list to get either to Michigan or get to Columbus, for a game in this series. It's truly it'll change your perspective as a college sports fan.
The biggest game of the week in the Big Ten, that's for sure, especially, but I would say in all of college football, Michigan taking on Ohio State. This is Jim Harbaugh's chance to go for his second win in 7 tries in this series. Harbaugh states, I think you're going to find we're made of the right stuff. Well, let's see if that's the case. Let us know in the comments below. Who do you think is going to win this game, Michigan or Ohio State? Let us know what your score prediction is. Let us know about Steve's thoughts about CJ Stroud. I'd love to hear all those thoughts. So hit us up in the comments below. We'll definitely have to reply to those on Monday morning, but let us know. And while you're there, hit like and subscribe. And thank you as always for watching SlasherU.